Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Purnam Supariprajaka Ashtotar Satasri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kundikiti Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Go. Mush, how are you?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Dhanavad. I'm doing better. Still like stuffy nose and cough, but
Sorry?
still stuffy nose and cough, but you know, everything's feeling a whole lot better.
Good.
Thanks for asking. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
By the way, everyone's welcome to be seen. That's an advantage of Zoom. If you like, you can turn your camera on, then we get to be very personal and all of that. Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right. Om Gana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamahyam Dadati Shapadantikam Vanshako Patirupyascha Kripasinto Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Well, we're open for questions, for comments, for topics. We've got Tina's all equipped. Maybe just at the top of my good list today, things that I'm finding nice. I'm listening to Hari Parshad Prabhu's seminars when different times of the day, and appreciating his learning and his insights and his character. Very nice to hear. Apart from Indradumna Maharaj and the Gurujan Prabhu's Govardhan retreats, all of these things I'm finding enlivening. Yes, Tulsi Priya.
Actually, my husband has more of the information, but we found out that a devotee from Philadelphia, Vishnu Aradhanam, who'd been a pujari there for a long time, just left his body, and they're having funeral services for him right now. Zoom funeral and whatever. And Satsrit Maharaj is speaking, I think. And I don't know if you knew him, but he was there when we lived there a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he's very
It's a mainstay
dedicated.
of the temple there. Vishnu.
Yeah. And his wife left her body a few years ago also.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, we could all disband and head over there, but maybe, how long is their program for?
I don't know. My husband knows more about it than I do.
I've told you everything, so.
Oh, okay. Do you have the info for the Zoom?
Not immediately at my fingertips, but I could get there.
Yeah, you could post it on the chat for those who are.
Yeah.
Maharaj, I'm a little concerned for you. I don't know, if you're feeling well enough to get through this or.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just a little tired, a little
Okay.
this and that. Nothing that makes life impossible.
All right.
We also hear that Sadhguru Prabhu in Mayapur is dealing with typhus and COVID, and that Pankajangre Prabhu is in quite a serious condition. So
with COVID or something else?
COVID. Oh. They said that they're moving him to Calcutta to be in an ICU there. So that's not, those are not encouraging words. So let's see. Says he's, just exhausted.
Oh.
So let us hope and pray for the best.
Yeah.
Yes. Such is the world.
Indeed.
This happy world. Well, is there anyone else who would like to sort of contribute something perhaps encouraging or relevant before we embark on 3 hours of Atina's questions?
I learned lots from Matina's questions. I learned from her questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I usually one question might take like half an hour, so you got it. It's gonna be like an overnight thing.
When I was initiated, Satsrit Maharaj said that said something like, I was well known. This is 20 something years ago, and Satsrit Maharaj says she's well known for asking a lot of questions. And then he said, let's hope she remembers the answers. And you definitely, I thought I was the one for questions, but Athena is the queen. She is definitely the queen.
I actually got a nice, I'll say something funny. This morning, Kastuba Prabhu gave the Srimad Bhavatam class at Bhakti Center, and we embarked on this discussion and took 35 minutes, and then I got a very nice message from Gail, Mother Gail.
I was going to say, Gail has been beat too, yes.
No, but she is very kind. It was she is great. I was appreciative that at least there was one person who didn't find my questions as needing to be tolerated. So I appreciate that. No, but I'm learning so much only because of my wonderful teachers. Yes, and Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj being at the forefront. So thank you so much.
There's a question Praveen put to me. He sends questions to me for some reason, but are these lectures I'm hearing recordings or live? They're recordings. I usually don't tune into live things. I get the same benefit from the recordings.
Maharaj?
Yes.
Could you provide a link to the Hari Parshad webinars that you're listening to, or whatever they are?
Just go to YouTube.
Okay.
And type in Hari Parshad.
Okay, thank you.
And there he is.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Atina,
I have plenty to say also if you want, if you want me to throw something out there.
No, Supriya, please, you can please go ahead.
Atina's been
Well-
saving up her questions.
When you mentioned Hari Parshad, I just thought it might be interesting, like if there was like kind of another a YouTube channel or a Zoom webinar, a Zoom meeting where people who watch different classes can sort of review the classes and say, oh, I watched this webinar by Parshad Prabhu and he talked about this, and I saw a class by, and sort of, what I think they call that a news magazine, where you bring up different topics and you talk about the different class. I don't know. Maybe it's a dumb idea. It just occurred to me though, to to introduce people who might not know about the classes. You say, yeah, there's this class and there's that class, and you give a little taste of it, and it's a way of repeating what you've heard also. I don't know. I'm interested to know if what you heard from Hari Parshad Prabhu that captured your interest.
What I'm
Me
appreciating
too.
is that he sticks to that he speaks from Shastra. That's the first thing. So I was listening to Putana's pastimes. I gave a class on the first verse of Bhagavatam, gave a class on definition of bhakti. He's given a series on Krishna's eating dirt. And he follows the Bhagavatam and then the commentators. He's quite well versed in what the commentators are saying, so that adds a lot of insight and a lot of flavor. And his Guru Maharaj, Radha Govinda Maharaj, is a wonderful speaker on Bhagavatam. His Bhagavad Gita, of course, now his health is troublesome, but his Bhagavad Gita is wonderful. Usually he speaks in Hindi, and I've been fortunate that I've been able to sit with a translator and listen. But just very chaste to Srila Prabhupada, and not fanciful or inventive or putting on a show, but just mining the verses, what's in there, with the help of the Acharya commentaries. And it's just wonderful to appreciate that that's what we have. We have this wonderful commentarial tradition with so many insights into Krishna's pastimes or Krishna's Krishna Tattva, Bhagavad Tattva. And we don't have to do more really than just repeat what we find there, what Prabhupada has said, what the previous acharyas have said, and then appreciate these things and try to understand these things as far as possible. Some things may be over our heads. We need to be a little careful about that. Some things we may not understand, so we just have to be patient with that. But there's so much nectar there. I remember Radha Govinda Maharaj was quite seriously ill after his stroke. He was in the room next to me at Juhu, and really, just coping with basic needs of living. But he'd been asked to speak on Bhagavatam, and so he did on the terrace there, the large terrace at Juhu. He spoke on Vritrasura Katha, killing of Vritrasura and Vritrasura's dealings with Indra and so on. And it was smashing, particularly because I knew how poor his health was. But when he was speaking Bhagavatam, it was just marvelous. It was just inspired and so wonderful. And it made me think of Vritrasura, you cut off one arm, you cut off another arm, still he keeps going. So I felt that way about Radha Govinda Maharaj, that he was just, you throw what you want at his body, but he's still there with Bhagavad Gita.
Mhm.
So I was just appreciating so much. So his disciple Hari Parshad follows that line of speaking Bhagavad Gita, and everybody appreciates it. You don't have to find some fashionable topic of the day. Just speak from Bhagavatam, and it will be enlightening. It will be relishable. It will be relevant. It will be attractive, especially among the devotees. It will be so much appreciated. So, so I've been listening that way, and he's also quite a cultured person. So he knows how to honor the devotees, how to honor the acharyas, how to yes, how to honor his spiritual master, how to speak very sweetly, very nicely, without, as they say, putting on airs. So that makes the topics also very much appreciated. And he's terribly learned. He's from just different aspects of our philosophy, especially from Jayadvaita Swami and the Sandarbhas, and from all over the place, really. So he responds to questions by reference to Shastra, which is the right way to respond. So I'm appreciating.
Maharaj, just
Yeah.
as a comment, and I apologize, since this is a small forum and we are speaking about Hari Parsha Prabhu and Shastra. I hear regularly from Jaya Jagannath Prabhu, and he is very in line with Hari Parsha Prabhu, and they discuss many topics. And I know this is a bit of a controversial topic, but just to throw it out there, again, this whole I apologize. Jaya Jagannath said that Hari Parsha Prabhu also agrees that, for example, one stay in the Brahmajyoti is permanent, that the nature of the soul is not active nor needing relationships. I think he also believes that the soul is formless and doesn't have a form. And when questioning, he said there was long back, Jayagdak said that, I think it was through Facebook, someone had asked a question. He gave an answer saying why Brahmin, so impersonal Brahmin, your stay there is permanent, and why for devotees it's the equivalent of hell because your stay is permanent. And he said Hari Parsha Prabhu responded and to his post and said, "Very nice, Prabhu, that you know Shastra." And so they went into this whole conversation about, again, these whole very controversial topics that we did not fall. So he also believes that we did not fall. He believes that, again, staying Brahmin is permanent, believes that we're formless. So it's interesting because as a man of Shastra, supposedly, and again, I can't personally account for it, and I haven't heard the lectures, but people in the class also pointed to a Q&A that he had, the Hari Parsha Prabhu had, that explains why I'm pointing to Shastra, that illustrates all of these controversial points.
Well, go ahead.
Oh no, so that's it's just interesting though, because sometimes I think, and there are times when I'm actually reading the Gita now and studying it, and I can read it and I go, oh, I can see why Jaya Jagannath thinks this, even just by this one line, I can see that. But it's sometimes of an interpretation and understanding. And when I said, and I'll push him, I'll say, Jaya, I know you're in the camp that Brahmajyoti, were formless, and he says, well, that's Jiva Goswami's camp. That's what he'll say. So I know it's a controversial topic, and my point sometimes too is I know if you get too scholarly, you could really get, I guess, I'm gonna say mixed up, but there are times when I read this and I go, now I kind of can see the thought process of what Jayadvaita is thinking, or I guess Hari Parsha people. Again, I don't want to say it's understanding, but you can argue either way. I guess you can find
Yeah,
arguments.
there's a nice point that I was hearing from Hari Parshad Prabhu the other day, and he was making the point that our acharyas sometimes disagree. So, for example, you read a Bhagavad Gita commentary, and Baladev Vidyabhushan says that this verse is talking about the individual soul. And then you read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, his own guru, and he says the verse is about the super soul. So you get, somebody says, well, that's contradictory. Which is it? Let's get this matter straight. And the point that he made is that these are different ways, that one acharya is right doesn't mean that the other acharya is wrong. So there are different angles of vision, different ways of looking at things. Even if the acharyas are disagreeing, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur referred to these disagreements as all loving controversies between the acharyas. So these things may be there. We may have a different understanding, and that doesn't mean that that we're wrong or that the person we disagree with is wrong. As long as we're united about the ultimate truth of Krishna Tattva, and as long as we're following Shastra, there's some space for difference of vision, difference of understanding. And therefore we have to be respectful to all the Vaishnavas, that not just wanting to tear the other guy down or get into a Facebook argument, but to appreciate, or just to stand back. Kendra says, since Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of our society, isn't it in our best interest to accept his take on Shastra and try to see things his way? Yes, of course. But even then, Prabhupada will comment one way and Baladev will comment another way. So the newcomer looks and says, oh my God, I thought Prabhupada was following the Acharyas. And now I see that Vishwanath says something different from Srila Prabhupada, or rather that Srila Prabhupada is saying something different from Vishwanath Chakravarti, or from Jiva Goswami, or for this or that. And then his faith is like, oh no, what do I do? But as we become more experienced, we see that these things are there, that the acharyas explore things from different angles of vision. To give us a sort of a charming example, there's this discussion about why Krishna closed his eyes when Putana witch came to kill him. And well, someone says it's because the first demon he was going to kill was going to be a woman. So he didn't want to open his eyes and see that. And someone says, well, he was playing like a baby, so he was sleeping. And someone says that he wanted to reassure Putana that, don't worry, you just carry on. And then there's many others, different commentaries. So these are all, what would you say, different takes, different ways of appreciating Krishna's Krishna Katha. We always have to be respectful to Srila Prabhupada. And I know there was some controversy many years ago. Someone wrote a book on a controversial topic, and they weren't content with saying the previous Acharya says X. They indirectly said that Prabhupada was wrong. And that was not very much appreciated. that was not very much appreciated.
Marsh, would you say then that, I mean, at a higher level than the principle of just going back to Godhead, Krishna Tattva, and then the rest, I guess this part are details? Would you make that argument?
Yeah, that was, in fact, that was the point that Hari Parshad Prabhu was making, that when it comes to the Mayavadis, now we're in a different territory, because they're interpreting. In fact, what he was talking about was interpretation of the holy name of Krishna. You shouldn't interpret one of the 10 offenses. And he was saying, now, if you look at it, we do interpret. Like Srila Prabhupada says that the mantra means, "O Lord, O energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service." Well, if you read the mantra, there's no "please engage me in your service" there. But that's accepted because it's giving the what would you say, bhavartha, the feeling of the mantra, the purpose of the mantra. So that sort of interpretation can be accepted. But the interpretation of the Mayavadis, that Krishna is a representation of some higher principle, that Krishna is just a means to the goal, that's not accepted. That's not accepted. Prabhupada, in his definition of mental speculation, one time he said, mental speculation means the speculation that comes to some impersonal conclusion.
Maharaj,
Oh.
then, oh, sorry.
Yeah, you've got two hands up, Tulsi Priya. You have to take the other one down.
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. This topic is really, my husband will tell you, it really exercises me a lot. It's been exercising me for at least 10 years. I read something just accidentally in passing from a sannyasi who's no longer part of ISKCON, who has a reputation for being, very erudite. And it kind of rattled me a little bit. And from that point on, I was just constantly doing research, and to the point that you read me anything from Prabhupada that says revive our original consciousness, or revive our Krishna consciousness, or our original position, or our original relationship with Krishna, I say, aha, see, he's confirming it there. And when I get into conversations with people who promote Jiva Goswami's viewpoint, one, they never show me an exact quote from Jiva Goswami or a scanned, image of a book that says anything. And two, there is always a variation on Prabhupada didn't mean it, and so I don't care if somebody wants to have a differing view, but there's always a subtle negation or minimization of what Prabhupada said. And I spent years looking up every reference that I could from Prabhupada, and Prabhupada reconciles both viewpoints. He reconciles fall, and he reconciles we don't fall. And it's all there. And whenever I present these reconciliations, they say it's not Shastra, it's not in the Bhagavatam, it's not in Bhagavad Gita. And they refuse to even engage with the arguments being presented. They literally ignore them. And I'm sorry if I'm being overly emotional about this, but it really, really, really gets to me, because I'm not scholarly, and I feel like the so-called scholarly devotees are using, it comes across like I know something that you don't, because I know Jiva Goswami, and you're a peon that only knows Prabhupada, and you're just accepting blindly and whatever, and it drives me bonkers.
There's, I think you made some good points there. Certainly, we have a low tolerance for anything disrespectful to the previous acharyas generally, and to Srila Prabhupada particularly. We have properly a low tolerance level for that. And sometimes I also have patience to listen to different points of view and different information from different acharyas and so on. But sometimes what I do observe is that, as you said, it's not so much about the philosophical principle, but we're driving some perhaps personal agenda there, or some institutional agenda, that it's, and you nailed the one that I think of, that I think I see a lot. I know something you don't know, I know something you don't know, which is, as indicated by the by the tone, it's childish. It's childish, but that sometimes seems to be behind what people are doing. Either that they're just displaying a sense that they're superior, or that they belong to a better institution because it's one that offers, truer understanding and so on. So that's not impressive. It's not spiritually impressive that this is what we're doing. Or as you say, just showing off our learning. If that's what we're doing, showing off our learning, or trying to, how did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu deal with someone who said that he'd written a better commentary than Sridhar Swami? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that anyone who disrespects the Swami is a prostitute. The Swami has a double meaning in Sanskrit. It can mean Sridhar Swami, the original commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, or it can mean husband, just as sometimes we hear a woman will say, oh, my Prabhu is not at home, meaning my husband's not at home. So another way to say that is my Swami is not at home. Especially in South India, you'll hear that my Swami is out. So Sridhar Swami or the husband. So anyone who doesn't respect the Swami is a prostitute. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu criticized very, very strongly that, yes, you're entitled to comment and to offer your understandings, but if you disrespect such a great acharya as Sridhar Swami, then no one will want to hear what you said. In fact, I was just reading this. Let's see if I have it, how far away it might be, if I can catch it. Let's see. Give me just a couple of minutes because it's... Yeah. Sridhar Anugata Kara Bhagavat Vyakyan Abhiman Chari Bhaja Krishna Bhagavan. He said to the commentator that Sridhar Anugata Kara, just follow in the footsteps of Sridhar Swami and Bhagavat Vyakyan, and give your explanation. Abhiman Chari, giving up false pride or false conceptions. Bhaja Krishna Bhagavan, engage in devotional service to Krishna. So that's our purpose, is to engage in devotional service to Krishna, to encourage others in the devotional service of Krishna. That's our agenda, to serve Krishna and to encourage others in the service of Krishna. If we have another agenda, such as furthering our pride or conceit or some other kind of what have you, that will not be appreciated. That gets in the way. Dragging useless criticism, trying to drag someone down, or just delighting in in controversy for the sake of controversy. We're looking for a fight. So like, we want to be like the Digvijay that goes around challenging everyone. That's not going to help us. That's not going to help us. So these points from different shastras are welcome when the speaker is respectful to the previous acharyas, respectful to the audience also, and understands that there may be more than one way of looking at things, and also that the truth is not as to pull from second canto, like a walnut that we can just keep in our hands. It's not such a simple thing that, well, I look it up in the book and I've got the answer and I'm right and you're wrong and I'll prove it to you. There's more subtlety that may sometimes be necessary. Subtlety, and by subtlety I don't mean craft, but there are nuances. There's a depth. Things are not just black and white. So a mature person appreciates that, and then can appreciate different angles of vision and even apparent contradictions. Even if you look in Prabhupada's books, you'll find that on page 12 he says one thing, and on page 20 he seems to say the opposite. And right, it's common. Sometimes it's because he's quoting from different acharyas, or rather following different acharyas, and he doesn't announce that that's what he's doing. So he's saying something, and he's pulling it from, say, Jayadvaita Swami, and then he says something else on another page, and maybe he's pulling it from Jiva Goswami or someone else, and it doesn't match. And you say, wait, Prabhupada said X, but no, Prabhupada said Y. Because there may be more than one way of looking at something. So that point is there, that the truth of one explanation doesn't mean the falsity of another explanation. And above all, we don't want to lose this point of being respectful to the devotees, and especially respectful to Srila Prabhupada and the acharyas. So your points are all well taken. And if these things aren't there, if the speakers are not respectful to Srila Prabhupada, if they're not respectful to the text, if they're not respectful to the devotees, then they won't be so much appreciated, and we may not want to hear from them. As far as sort of explaining away things Prabhupada said, that's going to be I heard from Kamalini today that there's a course going on hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is usually understood within Christianity as the way of reconciling questions within doctrine. How do we deal with things that appear contradictory, or how do we deal with different truth claims within our tradition? How do we reconcile apparent contradictions? So that's the general, how do we interpret? What's proper interpretation? These are the sort of questions that come up in hermeneutical discourse. And there are rules or principles or understandings that help us in hermeneutics. A lot of it is don't cheat. Don't use false or tricky arguments. That's a big part of it. Don't use bad logic to try to establish your point. And recognize sometimes when what you're citing is not the whole story, that there's another citation elsewhere that says something different. So these are all different issues. And then there's what's called hermeneutical strategies. What is our strategy for interpreting this text? What tools do we use? What methods do we use? and it can become quite sophisticated. But the basic principle of it is to have to honor the text, to honor the acharyas, and then to go from there, and then to recognize that it's not all about our being great, but it's about respecting Krishna and respecting Krishna's devotees, and trying to expand our understanding, to deepen our understanding, without beating other people over the head unnecessarily. If it's your disciple, that's a different thing. Beat him over the head as much as you want. It's good for him. But with other Vaishnavas, we need to have need to be gentlemen, as Prabhupada said, first of all. Prabhin made a comment. Let's see, let me expand my chat box a little bit so that I can see things better. Oh, Venkatesh has something. How do you define principle and detail? Well, that's a big discussion, of course. And Srila Prabhupada explains and deals with it in brief in Nectar of Devotion. And of course, there'll be different opinions about what constitutes a detail and what constitutes a principle. But these things are, what's the word, developed or explored in the association of devotees. What is it? And of course, hearing from the spiritual master, what is a detail that we can set aside and what's a principle that we should follow. Big discussion there. Venkatesh says, what if someone starts commenting on verses in a different way now and says that acharyas have also done it? How to know who is authorized or correct in giving commentaries in time to come? Again, we start with this principle of seeing that the text is being respected and that the Vaishnava Siddhantas are being respected. This is the most important thing. The text should be respected and the acharyas should be respected. Then we may offer a different understanding, but not as competition, not in the mood of competition or with the intent of surpassing or overstepping the previous acharyas. That will be subversive to our own spiritual life. That's the brief answer. The society of Vaishnavas will likely develop a consensus. What we appreciate, what we don't appreciate, and so on. Or we may take the guidance from those we respect. My Guru Maharaj accepted this commentary. All right, I accept it. Like their commentaries, they're not in our line, but Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur accepts them. All right, we accept it. Done. You don't have to ask. So if our spiritual master is accepted, we accept. Praveen says, one scholarly devotee once endorsed food distribution, even quoting Jiva Goswami. Since Jiva Goswami confirmed it, it should be done. And if no one questions, one may take it as authorized in ISKCON, food distribution to hungry. Yes, I'm familiar with the quotes. I'm familiar with more than one scholarly devotee who's endorsed that. And it's a question, of course, of context, because we're all in favor of food distribution. I don't think there's anyone who says, no, food should not be distributed. It's just a question of how it should be distributed, by whom it should be distributed, to whom it should be distributed. And then there may be discussion. I know one scholarly devotee who's expressed some quite definite opinions, and we had a discussion, he and I later, and sort of developed a more nuanced understanding between us of what what is what. So if that sort of respectful discourse goes on between us, then we all benefit. If it's just, I want to prove you wrong, I want to smash you, I want to show that I'm right, or whatever, or prove that something is the way. In other words, what they call an attached argument. I just want to prove my point, and I'm not willing to listen. Well, that will be difficult. In Bhagavad Gita, in a purport, Vada Vadavatama, we find that there are different kinds of discussions. And Srila Prabhupada mentions them briefly. That one is a discussion which each side is just trying to prove the other side wrong. Vitanda, I think that's the category. Just defeating the other person's points without establishing anything. There are different kinds of discussion, but Vada Vadavatama, Krishna says, I'm that discussion which aims at understanding the truth. Where both parties want to understand, well, let's try to understand what the truth is. Not that I want to defeat you, you want to defeat me. But let us try to understand what the truth is. So if we have that mood, then that will help us. Venkatesh Prabhu says, what if someone starts coming, okay, that we got before. Okay. It's interesting, Athena says, though, as I heard that ISKCON needed to have a stance on fall or no fall. So the GBC decided we fell. Hence, that is what's being taught. It made me think of the Council of Nicaea. Well, I don't know what the GBC's decision on these things is. And again, it's something for, what is that? Thoughtful devotees. It's thoughtful devotees, because we know it's not a secret that Jiva Goswami said that there's no fall. And it's also not a secret that Srila Prabhupada says we fell. So now the job of the devotee or the philosopher or the scholar or the hermeneutician is to say, how do we reconcile these things? Not that, how do we prove that someone's right? And, how do we prove that Prabhupada was wrong? Or that we know better, or that we're more faithful? But how do we understand that there are two different presentations here, apparently contradictory? Apparently contradictory. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Kendra said famously, Patitam Mam, I'm fallen. So what does that mean, fallen? And now we're getting into which argument is right, but there's I've heard different ways of reconciling this apparent contradiction. Some of them I find unsatisfying or unpersuasive. Some of them I find downright disrespectful. Some of them I find thoughtful. So, Prabhupada already reconciled them. Yeah, but then there's discussion. How did he reconcile them? What should we understand? It's not necessarily like cutting pie. You want to make the famous fall of the jiva the topic for the next Thursday. It'll have to be many Thursdays, people have wanted to discuss the jiva till Krishna's cows come home. So, but this principle is good to understand, that apparent contradiction, and how are apparent contradictions resolved? ultimately you go back to Godhead. That's where all the contradictions are resolved. You become fully self-realized. You become a personal associate of Krishna. You transcend the material platform and become Krishna conscious. And then that's where the contradictions are reconciled. That's the one definition of Krishna. If he's the absolute truth, is that person in whom apparent contradictions are all reconciled. So we have to appreciate that also, that because we're conditioned souls, because we're in this material world, because we're tiny, because we're not as smart as we think we are, we may not be able to understand everything. We can try to understand it using the tools available to us, and we may arrive at something that we find adequate or satisfying. But when you finally go back to Godhead, that's when you really understand everything. Okay, now I've got it. Now I've got it. Till then, there'll always be something that we don't fully understand, or that we think we understand but don't, or what have you. But when we come to genuine spiritual realization, or genuine love of Krishna, then everything becomes clear. Then everything becomes clear. What is that in the Bhagavad Gita? Prakashayati Bharata Tatparam. As the sun drives away darkness, perfect transcendental knowledge will drive away all doubts and misunderstandings. Okay, Kamalini has her hand up, so let's respect that hand.
I have a seat. My
Okay.
husband today has.
Oh, it's a Purva. Okay.
Yeah, rare.
Yeah, it's usually Kamalini. This time it's Purva.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you're familiar with Srila Prabhupada's talk November 13th, whatever year it was, during the Nectar of Devotion discourses in Vrindavan, I guess at Radha Damodar or some temple.
Radha Damodar, yes.
Yes,
72, I
okay.
think, no?
So there's that famous story about the cobbler and the Brahmana who asked, when am I going back home?
What was Narayan doing?
What was Narayan doing? And I'll cut to the chase. Since we only got a minute or two, the story was given by the cobbler that, yeah, anything's possible for the Lord, that he could. Prabhupada went on to describe the banyan tree situation, but then Prabhupada mentions, the cobbler says that the seed of a fig that drops from the banyan tree. Okay, so being a cook and stuff, I'm trying to figure out, how does a fig fall from a banyan tree? And
well, there's a whole essay about that in the BBT style guide. There are different trees. When Srila Prabhupada talks about the banyan tree, the banyan tree is called ficus, which means fig. Ficus religiosa, actually, the holy fig tree. Although it's not like the fig you buy in the store, it's also in the fig family. So when Prabhupada says there's a banyan tree with roots up and branches down, it's actually Ashwatam Yeta Uttamam. It's an Ashwata tree. And the Ashwatas are the trees where the leaves they come to a very slender little point. That's the Ashwata tree. And then there's another tree, the banyan tree, which is also in the fig family. Bengalesis, I think it is, Ficus bengalesis. And it's that's the one that the leaves are more broad, and they don't come to such a slender point, and they throw their roots up and then branches down in all directions. And Prabhupada just doesn't get too particular about which tree is which tree. And sometimes you can say that it's dynamic equivalence, what they call dynamic equivalence. It gives a clearer idea. If you say there's a fig tree, people think of, the figs that grow around the lachua, and you pop them in your mouth and eat them or offer them to Krishna. But that's not the fig that's intended here. It's the ashwata, the holy fig tree, which doesn't give you edible figs, but it's in the same family. So that's a botanical explanation.
Thank you, that'll do.
And if you would like to get it more thorough and with pictures and all of that, you can download the BBT style guide from my website and look up banyan tree therein.
Thank you.
Yeah. There was something else that I was thinking of before then. Oh. Tulsi Priya says, I don't want to discuss it, but this is my last chance to make sure my understanding is correct. I'm sick of discussing it, that is the fall of the jiva, but people keep bringing it up in a kind of mocking way, as if those who accept Prabhupada are a bunch of semi-literate rubes, which is indirectly insulting to Prabhupada. I'm not a scholar, but I don't think you need to be one to understand this point. Yeah, I think there is, as we were saying, sometimes there's people bring up the point, not because they want to deepen our understanding, but because they want to show their superior learning or show that they belong to a superior institution, or just to throw confusion your way, or what have you. And that's not particularly helpful. That's not particularly helpful. I have a sort of standard response for this endless. I have two responses. One is philosophical, which we could discuss sometime, which is how I personally go about reconciling these contradictory statements. And the other is general, which is how I treat people who want to talk about the fall of the jiva, and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it for no profitable purpose. My answer is that the soul, where does the soul fall from? Falls from Cincinnati, Ohio. And if they're from India, I say falls from Faridabad. I think that gives proper importance to the question. Okay. Am I missing anything else on the chat? No, I don't think so. Yes, we are at 7:59. We've got a few seconds left. We heard that His Grace Vishnu Aradhanam, from longtime mainstay of the Philadelphia temple, has left this world, and there's a program going on to honor him. And I think Kendra was going to post the where to find that. Some online program is going on.
For whatever reason, I wasn't able to access that information, no matter how hard I tried. So
okay, so that then at least we know. And the Tuaco Temple now has a Thursday evening program, which starts at 8 o'clock. So those who'd like to attend that program can just move over there. Is that hand still up, Purva, or is it just there because we haven't pressed the button? I think that's
Right, I just learned how to work
how to
it.
raise it, but yeah,
Okay, thank you, thank
there
you.
you go. And Mush, we wish you a swift recovery.
Thank you.
Back into action. And again, we heard that Pankaj Jangri Prabhu is in serious condition, and it's decided that he should go to the an ICU in Calcutta. I suppose he must already have done that. So you can keep him in your prayers as well. All right. Thank you all. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Maharaj, thank
Hi,
you very
Maharaj.
much.
Thank you so much.
Hare Hare.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Oh,
Thank you so much, Maharaj, and everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you for
Thank
the.
you.
Bye. Hari Hari Bol.
And thank you, Haridas Prabhu, for coming. Sometimes next time I'll have to draw you out of your silence and get your thoughts on things. But
Thank you, Maharaj.
thank you for coming. Hare Krishna. Jaya.
Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Hey, Prashant.
No.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Purva.
I say-
Krishna.
Hi, Krishna.
Sadhu Sadhu.